panels, and thank you all for being here today and those online. I'm going to hand over to Councillor Ferry for a few words. Thank you, Councillor.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce this item as the Chief Liaison Councillor for the Demographic Advisory Panels. The panels are really well supported by staff, and I want to particularly acknowledge Victoria, who is the principal advisor in that space. They're an amazing bunch of people. We're so lucky to have people of this calibre and skill and life experience to give us advice. So I guess I commend to you the presentations they're about to give, ask that we acknowledge the grace and the wisdom that we're about to receive, and yeah, really look forward to hearing from them. So really proud to be working with them too. So kia ora, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. While Victoria's making her way up, councillors, I plan to take a 10-minute break after the advisory panel, so you can have a little mix and mingle or go to the bathroom or grab coffee, aiming for a 1 o'clock lunch depending on the items, and that will be a half-hour lunch, and then we'll work through the rest of the business of the day. My expectation is we will finish today and not need to come back next Tuesday. That is the plan, and as always, we're all in your hands. Thank you. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you and kia ora koutou. I'm delighted to be at the table with the Youth Advisory Panel co-chairs who will be addressing you, and just like to acknowledge Divya Ragapathy, who is one of the co-leads of the Youth Advisory Panel. Our co-leads are staff who volunteer their time in addition to their day jobs to work and support the panels, and also the Youth Advisory Panel Liaison Councillor, Councillor Henderson. So I will now hand over to Vera and Sanat to introduce themselves and their panel strategic priorities for the term. Thank you.
Kia ora, councillors. Once again, I just want to start off with a huge thank you for this opportunity. I know me and Sanat have had a lot of conversations about these strategic priorities, and we're really excited to present them to you today. Myself, I have a background in engagement and a lot of work in the youth development space, and I get to come here not only as someone who works in the space, but is still a young person, and really excited to contribute to what Council has to offer to the young people of Auckland.
Good everyone, I'm Sanat, and it's a pleasure to be here today. We really are excited about the opportunity to talk you through these strategic priorities, but more importantly, it's just great that a governing body like this is willing and able to consider the voices of young people when often in these spaces they aren't as visible or as heard. So we're really excited to dig into it. A little bit about me. I have done work in civic engagement for young people for a long time now. I was part of the Puketapa Youth Foundation back in 2019 through to 2022, and we used to do a lot of work out in Mount Roskill to get people out voting, to engage them in whatever's happening with council, especially in terms of long-term plans and consultations. So yeah, I'll hand off to Vera to talk vision and big picture.
Awesome. So for our youth advisory panel, we were looking at these really big vision ideas about what we would like to accomplish over our tenure. And we ended up coming down to 3 core statements of what we would like to see for the young people of Auckland. Firstly, that we know that young people have a strong sense of belonging and meaning in the city. So this kind of expands past just living in Auckland, but feeling like they belong in Auckland, and that Auckland is a city that caters for them. We also see young people in Auckland making sure that they can navigate the city with ease. We're looking at this through the lens of public infrastructure, but also looking like they have the opportunity to contribute to what the future infrastructure of Auckland looks like. And then thriving young people, that not only young people feel as if they have a pathway to meaning, but they feel like a pathway to a sustainable future. So we're looking at this through the lens of employment opportunities, through economic development, through education, as well as housing and the cost of living crisis. I'll hand over to Sanat to talk more on the details.
Cool. So when we talk about connection and belonging and having young people feel like they have meaning in the city, more importantly, we mean thinking about Māori and Pacifica young people and how they navigate opportunities in the city, how we engage with those on the margins so that they are continually listened to and their feedback is incorporated into our decision making. But then also, how do we structure our communities so that they are reflective of the well-being needs of young people from a lot of diverse backgrounds? when we think about a resilient Auckland, an Auckland where young people can navigate and stay for a very long amount of time in terms of the built environment and infrastructure, we're thinking about climate action and justice, understanding that the acute impacts of climate change are most likely going to be felt by younger generations in the future. We're thinking about resilient infrastructure and development for a sustainable Auckland, so thinking about how young people are able to house themselves, young people are able to get around the city, and young people feel like the built environment here is one where they want to stay rather than move to another city or another country. And then when we think about thriving young people, an Auckland where young people have several opportunities to thrive, be themselves, and contribute to our economy and to the culture of the city. We're thinking about education, employment, and engagement, so involving them in the decisions that we make on a daily basis in bodies like this, whether that be through strong community engagement and council consultations, but also through just reaching out and running events designed for and by young people. We're thinking about housing and cost of living, so addressing the housing needs of a lot of young people that feel as if they are A, not going to be able to afford a house, or B, don't have services provided to them to find housing when they most need it. And 3, through civics engagement, ensuring young people are involved in a vibrant and growing local democracy. And that involves stuff like demographic advisory panels, but it also involves nurturing programs across the city that are bringing young people in to make better and more informed decisions about the city that they want to live in. Cool, so that's all from us. We'll love to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Rhoda and Sinette. It was a great presentation, very succinct, but got your message across. I'll take questions. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, team. Really appreciate your work and your contributions here. It's solid. We're having a discussion and how we frame our 10-year budget with the community. You know, how we discuss that in a different way. You'll be familiar with participatory and deliberative processes. And a lot of jurisdictions are doing that with phenomenal success, much greater by, and I don't need to tell you that. But have you discussed that as a panel, and do you have any feedback to us on the value of that versus, you know, the statutory and somewhat dull manner in which we've gone about engaging with communities in the past? Do you have any view on that, please?
I was literally just thinking about this point, so really excited that you asked this question. For the majority of our panel, we have a really strong work experience in engagement, whether being involved in consultations or leading consultations ourselves, and we have a really strong sense that we really do want to see things a bit more creative and a bit more innovative in terms of engagement processes. So when we're thinking of methods of engagement, luckily Sanat and I have been able to contribute on multiple Auckland Council strategies on this, and we've always suggested, you know, bringing in people from the community to lead these engagements, making more space for creative processes. We've seen slam poetry be used in engagements. We've seen illustrations being used. We've seen a lot of different creative art forms come into the space to kind of connect with young people specifically who are not politically engaged or who exist on the margins and aren't used to these type of processes. So absolutely, we stand in agreement that there does need to be a bit of a shake-up when we think of engagement, and really, really leaning towards a creative lens when you're thinking about that. But I'll pass it over to Sanat as well.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, all 3 of us over here actually have been involved in the Waitemata Local Board deliberative democracy pilots. Those ones were specifically constructed for young people, and the impact of that just very surface level was fantastic, because you had young people who had never thought about the way that their city is constructed or the decision making that goes in rooms like this, having really intelligent and thought out conversations about what they want their city to look like. I think if we continue to pursue what is a very easy and simple and familiar way to consult communities across the city, which is to put up something on AK Have Your Say and get people to answer that survey form, it's a lot of effort and work for community groups to go out and then collect that feedback. If we think about the way in which we're collecting that input, whether that be through participatory democracy methods, whether that be through what the I Am Auckland team has recently done with their slam poetry, there are a lot of ways to collect qualitative feedback that still holds a lot of value and which young people are more than willing to engage with, and which you will be able to extract insights to better your decision making. The results are phenomenal across the world when it comes to deliberative democracy practice, but there are a lot of different ways to do this.
Councillor Henderson.
Oh, I didn't actually have a question, but thank you, Chair. Just, it's wonderful to hear from you guys again, and just congratulations for everything that you're doing so far. A real credit to the city.
Bonus.
Thank you.
Councillor Sayers.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Darby, for asking his question as well, and thank you for your answer. It's very fascinating, and it's really pleasing to hear that kind of changes that can be engaged with and can occur, and wonderful to hear about the trial you're having with the local boards as well. So good work. Yeah, it's really pleasing. My question was just around, housing affordability, and if you're in a position to elaborate about what your thoughts are around how that might be able to be addressed. I'm just curious in terms of the feedback that you've got in terms of what council might be able to do in that area at all.
Yeah, interesting point about housing and our strategic priorities. Originally, it wasn't even included because we all thought it was completely unreasonable that we would be able to have an influence over the next 3 years. And for everyone on the panel, we hadn't even thought about home ownership at all. So we had to have one of our lead councillors, one of our lead officers actually suggest us to consider housing because it was so out of the scope of our imagination. So that's a really strong indication for how young Aucklanders feel about housing at the moment. But I'll let Sanat talk to how Auckland Council can have their influence in this space.
I mean, I think the bottom line is that as a youth advisory panel, we want to be giving you guys advice and feedback on the fact that housing is unaffordable, and we understand that there are solutions and ways forward to make housing affordable, whether that be through higher development, more consenting, higher density development as well. There are proven and built solutions that exist for housing affordability, and the Youth Advisory Panel is pretty engaged and tuned into those issues. So that's the sort of feedback we're going to be looking to give over the course of our term. But I think more broadly, it's about us trying to reckon the reality of the fact that it's projected that we're never going to be in home ownership. So what does a reality look like for young Aucklanders who still want to stay in the city? We want to be able to deliver those experiences and that insight to you based on the feedback that we get from our peers all across different communities. Yeah.
Councillor Watson.
Madam Chair, just picking up on a couple of your points here, and not least of which is that last one to do with housing and the rather damning indictment that is on a little country at the bottom of the South Pacific where home ownership used to be just a given. It wasn't, it wasn't a dream. It was something you expected for living in a country on the other side of the world. So my question goes to the empowering young people and the part that a really good civics education program might play in that. We have consultation, deliberative participatory democracy, but really what you have to harness is the political power and the voting bloc of young people that go to a whole lot of issues. So my simple question is, in terms of our education system, what scope and what difference do you think a vigorous and thorough civics program that actually educated people might make to all young people's issues?
Vera and I are both very lucky to be what we think are pretty civically engaged young people because we've participated in groups and community programs and events throughout our time in secondary school and university, which informed us but also empowered us to be confident enough to have opinions on these issues and be informed enough to share them. I think the really key thing, especially in a local government context, is to realize that civics engagement or civics education is not one-dimensional. We can deliver it through schools, but there's a lot of value that exists already in a lot of programs across the city which go out to high schools through local board grant funding and get young people, high schoolers, year 9s, to learn about Auckland Council and then answer a consultation. There are a lot of programs like UN Youth who go out to high schools and involve young people in systems of decision making that are very unfamiliar to them. So I think in terms of the council context, there is incredibly high value in civics education, simply because from our observations, when you give young people an opportunity to engage in a tangible way, like they feel like they can make an impact, they're going to give you a lot of valuable insight. How do we foster that in the city? It's about continuing to fund and nurture those programs that exist in our communities that bring young people together to talk and have these conversations. Yeah.
And just to add on to that, I think it's one of the most powerful investments that you really can make into young people, because when we go out into community, when we're talking about Auckland Council, the general consensus is that most young people don't actually know what Auckland Council serves the community to do. And I think it became a real big highlight during the Auckland anniversary flooding, that people didn't even really understand the scope of Auckland Council's power and influence. And only then, during a crisis, that they realized how much power that Auckland Council actually holds. And we don't want it to be just in a crisis. We want that to be long-standing knowledge that, you know, they know that Auckland Council is a space they can go to if they need support, if they need resource, if they want to understand what's going on in the city. And when young people feel like Auckland Council is a place to go to, they feel like it's a place that listens to them, they will be invested in what goes on here. They will be invested in contributing to consultations, to sharing their opinions, to even coming to work here. It becomes this long-standing cycle where young people feel listened to by Auckland Council because they understand its mechanics. So I think a rigorous civics education, specifically with an emphasis on local government, because I think that is sorely, sorely lacking, would just only benefit the young Aucklanders in the city.
It also has incredible benefits for voter turnout when young people are engaged. You know, we're suffering from like a third of New Zealanders voting in local government elections. That can be very easily turned around by engaging young people so that they are interested and knowledgeable enough to vote. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Vera and Sinette, for your presentation. Sorry, Councillor Walker. We thank you for your presentation, but thank you for your comprehensive answers. They were really, really good answers and thorough. We're going to thank you for being here today. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the advisory panel session if you'd like to. And I'll ask Victoria to see you back to your seats and bring up the seniors. Just for councillors and our mayor that